All right. Well, it's morning time in Nashville, and so good morning or happy daytime to you. I'm Gilbert, and so today's discussion is going to be on sequencing for any sort of Hatha class, any sort of Vinyasa class, whether it's something gentle, whether it's something power, just some different things to um, consider. And as I go through the different, going through the practicums, like some things that I notice is uh, sometimes there's gaps in, let's say, moving from a seated position and then getting people into standing and just telling them to stand up, um, or just moving from one thing to another that there's no connecting elements to it. And I think it's very important to um, make the class as seamless as you can and understand that sometimes things are going to change on the fly. Sometimes you might not get there, but trying to do that as much as possible. And also while using the breath cues. So, especially in a Hatha Vinyasa class, we are combining the use of breath to support the movements, to support the postures. And if you can provide more information in a concise way, that just gives students more of an opportunity to stop thinking so much and then just do what you're telling them. And then they'll be able to trust you that you know kind of where you're going. And if you can cue the breath and a sequence that feels very fluid, there's going to be less of those like interruptions. And then it's going to give them, yeah, just more um, you're just going to provide the direction so that way they're not going to be like, well, how do I get from point A to point B without so much having to be like, oh, do I need to step back? Or if they're not paying attention, or if you're not cueing as much breath, then they're just, the purpose of the breath is to keep people present, to keep them aware of what's going on. And so that way, especially in a class where there is a little more time to be in a pose, they're feeling it in their body, and then they're able to make those adjustments, those modifications that'll serve them a little better. Some elements of a class, just to make it feel well balanced, um, that I try to include in every class is some sort of some standing postures, so things from like a Tadasana, some balancing postures, whether it's a tree, an eagle, a dancer, um, some sort of things that are going to start getting more into the hips, whether it's a warrior one, warrior two, um, and then things from those general shapes, some sort of forward folding, some sort of side body stretching. So this way we're taking the spine in all the directions, and also some sorts of twists and hip things like a pigeon or butterfly pose, um, and then some sort of back bend, even something as gentle as a bridge, a supported fish pose, or it can be a little more involved, like a floor bow or a wheel pose, or cueing them towards more of like a king dancer sort of thing. But there's always different like levels to a pose, and I'd like to think in the way that I teach, I kind of start with a simple or more accessible variation, so that way people can kind of go there and like stay there, or from that space I'll add on a little thing to make it more, if they're ready for something new or something different, I'll provide the information to like set them up to get to that point where they don't necessarily need to do it, but it's just kind of showing them, hey, this is where you go. um, and with sequencing, some of the biggest things that I think about is kind of with the transitions between poses is how can I minimize the adjustment of the foundation. And so by that, I mean, So let's say I'm going, if it's a more gentle class, and depending on the students, let's say I'm in a Warrior 1. So in a Warrior 1, in a class with like students who are maybe a little newer and might not be as open or flexible, from here I might go into a Warrior 2, and then that's just going to be a subtle step, but I try to avoid that. I try to look at movements that I can do, whether it's a pivot on the toe or a pivot on the heel, just something I can move. Because from a Warrior 1, your feet are going to be a little wider. Hips are going to be pointed to the front, chest is pointed to the front. When you go to a Warrior 2, your front leg stays the same, but you're in a more heel to heel, heel to arch alignment. So this way you can stack your hips over your shoulders still, but now they're pointing towards the long side of your mat and your arms are reaching wide. So from a Warrior 1, some transitions that I like would be going from a Warrior 1. So let's say I am in a down dog. And from your down dog to get to Warrior 1, I would cue inhale, lift whatever leg I'm going to take. Actually, I'll do the left one so you can see better. So inhale my left leg up. Exhale, step forward to the lunge. Ground my back foot. And inhale, rise to the Warrior 1. So here, making the cueing, making the adjustments here in the feet, and then finding the pose. And I like adding a lot of back bends, whether it's like a cactus arms type thing, just because I feel like so many people were always rounded, whether that's on our phones, on computers, writing, reading, we're a lot more closed. So I try to include a lot more opening, stretching across the chest. So inhale here, and then exhale, cactusing your arms, and inhale, straighten the leg. Now this is prepping you for your pyramid shape. And as you exhale, fold forward for pyramid. So there's no change here in the feet. The only thing that's changing is straightening the left leg, and now you're folding. And again, here you can bring your hand wherever you want. And so from also this shape, what else can you do? It's like, oh, okay, if I bring my right hand down, I can take it to a revolved triangle or pyramid, depending on what you call it. And from here, it's easy to bend your knees, come back into a lunge, so you can inhale back to plank. If you're moving through a vinyasa, then you can exhale chaturanga, inhale up dog, exhale down dog. And now, if I'm going to go into a Warrior 2, and the classes I'm a little more familiar with, I know that they're have deeper stances in their positioning. And this way it's, again, I'm not moving the feet. I'll come into a high lunge. So inhale from your down dog, leg up. Exhale, step into your lunge. Now keep your back heel over your toes and now rise into your high lunge. Or crescent lunge is typically what I call this. So here you're in your crescent lunge. You can breathe in and then breathe out to Warrior 2. So now all you're doing is pivoting on your back heel and spinning your toe down. Arms reach wide. And now this is going to give you a bunch of different things that you can play with. You can take it to a reverse warrior. You can straighten your front leg, take it to a reverse triangle. You can go to a side angle, triangle. You can take it to a side lunge, skandasana, to the back of your mat, to the front of your mat. From your Warrior 2, you can open up into a star. And again, you're just pivoting on your feet, or pivoting on your heels so you can adjust your toes. And from here, you can take it to a wide leg forward fold. And then here, you can breathe in, take your hand up or down. You can side lunge from here, side to side. You can just stay in a wide leg forward fold. So it just gives you a whole bunch of different options. And from here, even if you go back to a low lunge at the top, you can do things from here, an extended pyramid pose, straightening your front leg, or bending your knee. You can plant your hand, take an easy twist. And you can bring your hand down. And again, now your hands are on the floor. And this way, if you're moving through a vinyasa, inhale back to plank. Or even if you want to do something different, let's say you want to start or end here, you can step your back foot forward. Now inhale, halfway lift. Now your feet are together. Then exhale, fold. And inhale to a mountain pose, hands high. You can bring your hands to heart center. So another place where I like to start, whether it's either the front of the mat or the back of the mat, and I'll just do it for the front for now, is if I'm going to move from, let's say, a standing position straight into a vinyasa. So one foot's going to stay exactly how it is. So let's say I like to do it from a chair pose. So this way I can use the arms kind of to help with a little bit of momentum and a little bit of stability. So let's start in a forward fold. And then inhale to a chair pose. You can pause here for a moment. And then exhale, drinking bird. You can sweep your hands back. And ground your left heel and inhale, lift your right leg, single-legged Tadasana. So now here students are playing with their balance, and then you're getting them prepped for maybe a more extended pose like a tree or an eagle or dance or just anything where they're balancing on one foot. And from here I could exhale, step back to a low lunge. And now it's like my hands are on the floor. So I can have them step back here or have them ground their back heel, and then that'll take me right into a warrior one or into a crescent lunge. Then I can move my sequence from here. And then just to get back up to the front, let's say I want to get back here. So one transition that I like, let's say I get into a warrior two. From a warrior two back into a crescent lunge. So just pivoting on the back toes, sweep your back arm forward and lift your chest as you breathe in. Then exhale, back bend. I like a lightning pose. You can lean forward, reach forward. And now press off your back toes. Inhale to an airplane. And exhale, mountain, and hands to heart center. So that's just one way to kind of start combining different elements and just being very mindful of the movement and the breath that's associated with it. So typically a lift, a lengthen, what are the other ones? Lift, lengthen, return to center are going to be inhales. Typically, it's not always the case, but for the most part, that's usually the way I associate the breath with the movement. And an exhale would be more of like a deepening, a releasing into the pose, a surrender, a twist, lowering, folding type movement. And so I'd encourage you to kind of just play with those movements on your own and just really notice when you're moving, what breath are you using and how does that feel? Maybe trying a different movement and really slowing your breath down. So this way we're not rushing through any of the postures, but our breath is supporting us the entire way through the pose. Same thing would go from, let's say, seated positions and different elements that you can include. So let's say you start in a butterfly and bottoms of your feet are together and knees are wide. Inhale, you're sitting tall. And exhale, you'll fold forward. And here, just being mindful of your breath. And let's say you sit up tall as you breathe in. And exhale, extend your right leg and keep your left foot against your inner right thigh. So now it's not too much moving. There's still some parts of the body that are connected to the floor. Now you can take a single leg extension. Inhale your arms up, square your shoulders, fold over your extended leg. And you can be here for a little bit. Lengthen as you breathe in. Find length through your spine. Then as you exhale, if you can, sink a little deeper and bend your knee to make it more accessible. And take another breath in. Stay for your breath out. And inhale, sit up tall. And now take your left hand behind you, plant it on your exhale. Now ground through your shin, ground through your hand, point through your toes. And inhale, stargazer, lifting your hips. Right, so then exhale, bring your hips back down. And lean over your left hip so you can swing your right leg behind you. Now this sets you up for a pigeon pose. So legs behind you. Now as breathe in, walk your hands back, lift your chest, square your hips, and exhale, you can sink into it. And stay here for as many breaths as you want. Last breath out, hands back to your shoulder, and inhale, prop yourself up. Exhale, lean over your left hip, and swing your right foot out in front of you. Go ahead and plant your left foot here. So now left foot's flat on the mat. Right leg's extended, left hand behind you. Sit up tall, breathe in. Exhale, twist. Inhale, release, back to center and switch. Send your left foot out and right foot in. So those are just some different things that you could work with while even playing from a more grounded position. Let's say you're in a low lunge with your knee on the ground, your back knee. So one transition that I see in the videos quite a bit for the practicums and a movement, it's not that you can't do it. I would say just be conscientious of it because it's not necessarily the most accessible. Moving from a tabletop to a low lunge, it's really hard to create enough space between your chest and the thigh to step your foot forward. I would suggest really using blocks in that case, or doing it from a down dog, just because that's going to give you more room to step forward and then ground your knee. And so from your lunge, you can do different things like inhale, hands up. You can take opposite hand, grab your wrist, take more of a side body stretch to either side. So it'd be inhale up, grab your wrist, exhale. So this one I would reach. So my left foot's forward. Inhale, left hand to right wrist. Exhale, side body stretch. And take a breath in and reach. Exhale, sink a little deeper. Inhale, back to center. Exhale, back bend. Inhale, hands up. And now exhale, you can take a half split. Hands down to the floor, straighten your front leg. Lengthen your spine, breathe in. Fold as you breathe out. Lengthen, breathe in. Fold, breathe out. Pose I like to do from here is keeping my right hand down, front leg straight, and now revolve. And here, keeping your left hip down and back, flexing your left foot. So it's going to be a nice little stretch here on your IT band. And if that feels uncomfortable from students, you can do it with both knees grounded. Right hand down, left leg up. Then here, reach high. Or even if you want, keeping your back knee down, another transition you could do would be going to like a gate pose. So stepping your leg out to the side. Inhale, hands up. And exhale, left hand to left leg, right arm reaches up and overhead. Inhale to center. Exhale, right hand to the floor, left arm reaches over. Now you've got more of a modified side plank. And inhale, back up. And then exhale, hands in front of you. Inhale, back to a tabletop. And exhale, ground. So that's even one way you can get into it. So just thinking about what points of contact can you keep with the floor, so that way there's some stability and grounding, and then how can you work around that general shape. So from a tabletop, you can take your leg out to the side, you can do some hip circles, and from the side, you can come up to your gate pose. You can bring your foot forward for your lunge. I mean, even from your gate pose, or from your lunge, I'm gonna turn this way. From your lunge, you could even take this to like a modified warrior two. Then here you can do some stretching, some moving for your hips. Yeah, and then from a standing position, standing position, there's so many things you can do with your arms. So inhale, extended mountain, right hand to left wrist, exhale, side body stretch. Inhale, center, left hand to right wrist. Exhale, side body stretch. Inhale, stand tall, back bend, breathe out. Inhale, stand tall. Exhale, open arm twist. Inhale, center. Exhale, open arm twist. Inhale, center, bring your palms together. Now thumbs down to the nape of your neck. Breathe out, elbows to the ceiling. So now this is a nice tricep stretch. And keeping your tailbone tucked. Elbows reach to the ceiling. Inhale, hands high. And exhale, go ahead and bring your hands down to heart center. And so even from here, you can do easy things. So if I was just going to step back, I'd say like maybe lean into your left leg and inhale, lift your right. And exhale, lean forward, step back, and inhale, warrior one. Or inhale, high lunge. Or ground your back heel, open to a warrior two. So those different elements, the point of contact with the floor. So that way not everything is changing, or it's just a little easier to get from one point to the other. And really being conscientious about the breath that needs to be used in order to support the pose. And just really trying to make the class feel as fluid and cohesive as possible. And really think about how you get from point A to point B in a more seamless way. So that way, students don't have to think so much. They can just be in the practice. They can just be listening to their body. They can just be conscientious about their breath. They're not having to think so much about what needs to happen. And if I'm thinking of when it comes to sequencing, so that's generally like how I would structure class, what I like to think about when I'm moving from movement to movement. Or another movement that I like, if you watched the peacock class yesterday, we did it in the flow. Let's say I'm in a lunge, low lunge, and inhale, take my hands up. One movement that I really like is like coming into a half split, and your hands don't need to sweep back, but I like it with airplane arms. Back toes tucked, and this way I can come into a crescent lunge and inhale, come all the way up and lift. And even if you want to play with that a few times, exhale, knee to the floor, sweep your hands back, straighten your front leg, inhale all the way up, exhale, bring it down. So if I'm introducing a movement that might be new to students, or if there's a lot of students who are unfamiliar with it, if it was something like that, I might run through it a couple times with just the breath to the movement, so that way students can feel it in their body before moving on. So if I was doing this, let's say, inhale, hands up, exhale, half split, tuck your back toes, inhale, crescent lunge, exhale, knee down, half split, inhale, crescent lunge, knee lifts, exhale, ground, take it back, inhale, open up to warrior two, breathe out. Yeah, and then that way they can feel that in their body. If I'm teaching a peak posture, so for example, the video on Peacock, throughout the sequence, I really focus on what parts of the body need to be open, what needs to be active, and how can we prepare that part of the body. Yeah, just what needs to be ready. And then how can I show the posture in some different variations. So peacock pose, arm balance here. Elbows squeeze in, triceps are on the ribs, elbows are reaching down towards the navel or towards your hip points. So in my Sun A, it would be inhale, come all the way up. To start prepping the body for back open, elbows pulling in. It's like hands together. And as you exhale, bring your elbows together down towards your navel. And inhale, take your hands up. And it was like exhale, bringing your arms down, forearms towards one another, and then squeeze in. So this is showing just two different ways, getting them ready for, oh, this is how it needs to be in the back. Slight tuck here in your tailbone. So now they're seeing it from a standing position. And inhale, come up. And then exhale, we did a back bend as well, because that's so much opening of the back and compressing in the front side of the body. So that's an element that I included on the front end of a Sun A. We did some stuff lying on our back as well, where students got to feel it. So then they feel a little more of the core engagement by lying on our backs and trying to float your legs, but then bringing your hands here. So this is your peacock shape, except we're just flipped over. Then we would do this for a little bit, extending the legs. So now they're feeling the core activation. And I included some drills to focus on building core strength. Peacock's going to be a lot of strength in the low back, a lot of strength in the core. So throughout the sequence, another little sequence that I like, especially I teach a lot of power classes to just warm people up for this. Not quite tabletops. Tabletops, hips over knees, shoulders over wrists, but more of a modified plank. So hips are slightly in front of the knees. And sending the hips back, and inhale into a modified plank, and then lower all the way to the floor, breathe out. And low cobra to strengthen the back. Exhale, lower down. A modified locust pose or lotus pose, lifting one leg at a time, pressing into the palms, shoulders towards the mat. So here you're getting the same engagement in the arms, but now you're really working the muscles in the back and your glutes to help lift your leg. So you would do that one time. Hands under your shoulders. Inhale, modified plank. Exhale, hips to heels. Inhale, modified plank. Exhale, hips to heels. Inhale, modified plank. Lower halfway, modified chaturanga. Inhale up. Exhale back. Inhale forward. Lower halfway and ground your hips. Inhale, high cobra. And exhale, come down. Here we would lift both legs. Press your hands and lift. Then lower. Hands by your shoulders, modified plank and tuck your toes. Inhale, plank. You can keep your knees down to modify. Exhale, hover knees, hips to heels. Inhale, plank, and exhale, chaturanga. Back up to plank. Hover knees, hips to heels, plank to chaturanga, up dog, breathe in, and take it to the floor, breathe out. Hands by your sides, lift your legs, lift your chest, now lift your arms. So then there was a little progression. One leg, two legs, both legs, and your arms and your chest, and then hands underneath your shoulder. So then those are different things that I would include in a class. In that sequence as well, we did a lot of warrior threes, where the whole core is active and reaching. Um, we did a side angle with our arms extended. So again, that's not just strengthening the legs, you got to have a strong base, but also strong all around your core. And then just playing with different elements of that. Um, I, I would suggest um, the teachers that whose classes you really enjoy, really look at the way they structure their classes, look at the way they sequence their classes and how they're cueing the movements. Um, the teachers that I really enjoy are the ones who everything, I don't have to think about anything. I can allow myself to just be a student. Everything kind of like flows together really well. I love when a teacher kind of just slowly builds on a sequence, like adding a new element to it kind of every time, and you're not really sure where it's going to go. But next thing you know, it's like your legs over your head or something like that, or close to being over your head in like my case, because that's never happened. But yeah, just something like that. It just feels like a beautiful evolving, like a flower just like blossoming. It's like, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, dang. Everything just like comes together and just felt so smooth um, getting there. And so whenever someone takes my class, that's what I hope that they, a general like experience that they get, that I'm guiding them all through the class with the breath cues, with the transitions, with postures that feel good one after the other because they make sense because they're all pretty generally they're all connected. And have I've been fortunate to teach a lot over the years. And so once you get comfortable with like the movements, it's kind of just like a puzzle. You know which pieces like fit well together. And that way, if something comes up, it's like, oh crap, like maybe I had something else in mind, but we're here and I know that we can go to here, here, here. And then you can just start to like plug and play different things in your sequence, which makes it, yeah, makes it a lot more fun. And I would just encourage you to um, maybe practice with different teachers also, so that way you can get a little more like inspiration. It's always nice to get a fresh perspective and use the elements that spoke to you where you're like, oh man, that was like a cool transition. And not just a cool transition, but it also like has a purpose. So a lot of the things that I'm doing, you can explain anything like however you want, but it's nice when there's a little more of a purpose to it. And it's like, oh, this twist is prepping me, and this back bend is prepping me for a standing bow pulling pose. Or all these back bends are preparing me for a wheel at the end of the class type thing. Or even just a dancer pose. Or all these hip openers are preparing me for a pigeon or a full pigeon. Um, and yeah, I happy sequencing, I suppose. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section and I will get back to them. But I hope this was beneficial. I really enjoy sequencing. I think it's just fun to really, especially when, like for a peak pose class, if you can kind of, not necessarily like disguise it, but it's just nice to see once you give students like the tools to kind of build towards that pose. Let's say they don't get it in that class, but let's say there's an opportunity in a future class, and it's like it's cool to see them using the things that you've provided to work towards it, and then eventually when they get it, that's like the coolest. That's the coolest. It's great. So yeah, if you need anything, feel free to reach out. But otherwise, I hope you all have a great day. Thank you, and take care.